our speaker series for this academic year. So we hope to see everyone again in the fall, and we're going to have another exciting lineup. And I'm really pleased today to have Susan Ramsey from the National Center for Atmospheric Research joining us here today. She's a security engineer and risk assessor at NCAR and holds multiple professional certifications, a Master's of Science in Computer Information Technology from Regis University, and is pursuing a second MS through the FANS Institute in Information Security Engineering. She's got over 20 years of experience in enterprise IT, from operations technical support to program management and consulting. And let me just say on a personal note, I've had the pleasure of knowing Susan for many years now, and in the community of cybersecurity for scientific computing, she's been one of the real leaders in driving forces in coalescing that community and sharing her expertise and building really valuable connections to the private sector and elsewhere. And I'm really excited for Susan. I think she's going to mention this in her talk, but she's going to be transitioning to taking a job in information security at Amazon. So I really want to congratulate her on that transition, and I'm really glad to be able to hear about her current role at NCAR today and some of her thoughts going forward. So with that, please join me in welcoming Susan.
Thank you, Vaughn, and just big thanks to CACR for inviting me here today. I stay up all night thinking about these things, and it's great to have a chance to actually rant with a fixed audience. So wonderful that you're all here. I prepared a lot of slides, and this is the first time I've made an effort to put all of this specific set of thoughts into a presentation. So you're my beta audience. Please give me feedback afterward. Anything that you feel would help me, improve this presentation and these ideas or convey them better would be fantastic. And also want to say I appreciate that you were able to reschedule me when we were facing furloughs and I had to cancel travel for February. So I apologize for that. And thank you for doing that. So this is who I am. I work for mostly large Silicon Valley companies, large tech companies. I've had 5 years at NCAR now, and I've had an amazing opportunity to do something really new at NCAR to actually build a full program. And I just jumped right into it. It was sort of, every once in a while in life, an opportunity comes up, and you have to decide if you're going to take the red pill or the blue pill. And I worked with a small team, and we've built all of these aspects that one would consider for a full program with procedures, in some cases official policy, and in some cases we've used standards, documented all the technology for it. My team and I just finished installing a brand new SIM. We never had one before, so we have one now. And we have this amazing network security monitoring. It's actually catching, the bad guys doing stuff to us on our network now. We have a really well-written and well-orchestrated incident response now. So I did a large part of that with my team and for my team, procedures. What we've accomplished in 5 years has just been incredible. Lately, I've been working on this one, asset inventory, which is funny because you're supposed to do this one first. But asset inventory is probably, I think, the hardest critical security controls. And probably all of you at the university here understand this because funding happens in distributed fashion. So folks get IT assets, right? And then stand them up, and they don't necessarily go through a central vetting process where it gets put into a one asset inventory. So one of the main things I built at NCAR is a way to do IT risk assessment. And I also built a vendor and product risk assessment process, which is a lot easier than what people are doing with HackStat. Are you guys familiar with HackStat? All right, so that's a long, complicated spreadsheet, and we didn't feel like we were ready for that yet. So we did some other stuff, and then we built a process that actually is working really well. So that's a little bit more about that. Vaughn told me this series is cybersecurity for complex environments. I was going to talk about how hard it is to get scientists to put audit logging functionality and things like this However, I had just read this NCSC article of cybersecurity as a complex system, and I was really taken by this idea that you can decompose this mechanical mouse and then put it back together again, and it will still work. But if you try to decompose this live mouse, you can't put it back together again. It won't work anymore. So I really got to thinking, why is cybersecurity complex? Is it complex or is it complicated? What do you guys think? Complex or complicated?
No.
Good answer, because I agree with that. So I wrote a bunch of things down, and I started really thinking about it. And I'm just going to have a quote here, but I really started thinking, why is it complex? Are we just not tackling it in the right way? Are we just not thinking about it in the right way? Maybe really it's complicated, and we just need to decompose it better. And what do we need to decompose it, right? How can we break it down into small enough bits that we can actually tackle it, and then build something where we really feel like we're managing all of the pieces of it? Because I actually, just because, someone says it's complex and you can't decompose it, I immediately am like, well, why not? Just do it, right? So I've been reading a lot of behavioral economists. Have you guys read Kahneman? Yeah, Kahneman, yeah. So the system 1 and system 2, and I'm really going to say right now, just straight up, I believe the complex part of cybersecurity is the human brain. Right. So I think we spend a lot of our time as cybersecurity professionals in kind of the system 1 mode of thinking, where we're reacting to attacks coming in, we're reacting to our CEO yelling at us for doing something bad, we're reacting to our users telling us we just shut off their access to something very important. We're desperately trying to stay ahead of these bad guys doing horrible things. We're imagining all the time, what is the risk, what is the threat, and so we're spending a lot of time in the emotional reaction phase. And so I think this is where we're seeing a lot of the complexity in what we're building, which I think for the beginning years of cybersecurity as a defined area of research and education and knowledge and skills, it was about how to get stuff secure as fast as possible and just get it done, right? And I just want to point out that we have a lot of adrenaline, right, in our industry. Does anyone argue with this? No? Okay. And then we often, especially in incident response, incident response here. I know, yeah, right. So what happens when you have an attacker and suddenly it's go live, it's game on, right? You got a guy, whatever, some breaking into things, you have SSH brute forcing happening on an internal network segment, and you're like, all right, what do I do? If, they're getting in, they're spreading whatever it is that they're using to exploit the first system into the areas of the network that you really don't want people coming into. So can you describe what happens in that moment?
Well, depending on how you're resourced, you may see it after the fact and have to do some analysis. Yeah, there's panic, sweaty palms.
Yeah, sweaty palms.
Yes.
Tunnel vision, right? Is it easy to think about a lot of different factors while you're in this? Like, communicate with your boss, find the logs, shut off the ports, right?
Work with the attackees, if you will, make sure that they're on board. And
yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of skills involved in response, and the military knows this, and John Boyd wrote this OODA loop process, describes it, and actually does adrenaline training for people in combat to help them work through the physical effects of adrenaline. And I know that some folks in cybersecurity are recognizing that these physical experiences happen, but I just don't think that it's really acknowledged enough. We live in a state kind of constant, like, DEFCON 2 alert, right? Like, who's going to get us next? And it wears and tears on the human body and also psychologically. So I think what we're ending up with today is, these headlines, right? You have, so on the one side, your CISOs are going to the bar and drinking every night, right? And, right? And then on the other side, you've got these people who have probably pathological overconfidence and narcissism issues, who are making really bad judgments, right? Because they think they know what's going on. But how do you address this, right? How do you address either of these? And what are we really looking at, right? Which I think is, it's a lot of uncertainty. And your overconfident people in a vacuum of uncertainty will make decisions based on gut feeling, on intuition, on system one, right? Are you familiar with system one if I talk about it like this? The part of the brain that is based on emotion or on a feeling or on it's very fast. It's like an emotional macro. I like to call it a macro because you've already done this before. You have some knowledge somewhere, you know, like set aside, and your brain's like, oh, I know that. I'm going to make a decision right away, right? I'm taking the red chair. I'm going to McDonald's. I'm buying Nike. System one. I'm going to buy that. I'm going to buy that sim that's totally Windows-based. I have a full dashboard, and I am not going to think about the fact that all of my deployment is Linux, right? Okay, so why do we have such uncertainty? Why do we have this, you know, this sort of system one kind of processing going on? And we're still new. We're still pretty new as an area of study and an academic area. So I'm going to say that as a risk assessor at NCAR, I believe I've found one of the core issues of it. Because that a lot of what we've been told to do in the past is qualitative risk management. And I'm not knocking NIST. I think NIST is amazing. There's a huge body of information in NIST that we can all use and continue to use. The SP 853 is an amazing catalog of controls that we can use to think about decomposing what it is we're looking at. And I think you had a gentleman here, Gary, yeah, and he said the same thing, that, you know, this is being used in a way that we really didn't intend for it to be used with. I'll talk a bit about what I found personally in trying to do risk assessment using the NIST method, which is Special Publication 830. So you do this process, right, where you identify your threat sources, and then you identify your vulnerabilities, and then you determine the likelihood of occurrence, and then you determine the magnitude of impact, and then you determine your risk. So everyone knows risk is threat times vulnerability, right? Has everyone heard that? What does that mean? Does anyone have like a really good, clear answer for what does that mean? My threat is a hacker, cracker, nation state, and my vulnerability is an Apache stress bug. What do I do? You know, like, where are we going with this? So I found in doing risk assessments that there's a lot of imprecision. The documentation, this is straight out of 830 guide for conducting risk assessments. It sort of assumes that you already know what you're doing when it tells you what to do. And I found a lot of circular referencing in here that made it very difficult for me to start modeling these types of things. So we have a taxonomy of threat sources, and then we have like actual, these I actually found very useful. These are threat events. This is what NIST calls threat events. These are what bad guys do to you, right? They craft phishing attacks. So I started rewriting these, saying attacker crafts phishing attacks. And I'm like, well, that's not really what they're doing. They can craft a phishing attack all they want, sitting in their desk or their mother's basement. It doesn't matter to me if they're sitting there making phishing attacks. What matters is attacker sends phishing attack to my user, right? Or user falls for a phishing attack. Because then you can look at that as my user has fallen for a phishing attack. Well, what can I do to prevent that, right? So I want to always look at my threats or my threat events or whatever we're going to call this thing right here, threat event, threat. What was it? Was everything? Yeah. Crackbacking. I want to look at my threats. I want to analyze my threats. I want to name my threats in a way that I can do something about it. And then vulnerabilities. What's a vulnerability? Again, self-referencing. And I found personally a bunch of imprecision here. This guy's saying you got red team reports already. How am I going to do red team reports? How am I going to do a pen test if I don't even have asset inventory because I haven't started the RMF yet, right? So again, lack of definitions and assumptions in here. And so of course my CISO or my CEO is going to be like, I don't even know what to do with this, right? Just give me a give me some colors. Red, yellow, green. Give me some colors, right? Right. Is this a risk? What is that? Is that a risk? That's a kitchen tool. Okay. What am I calling this thing? Do I care if the threat actor or threat group has a name like Hidden Cobra and maybe is out of North Korea and the same TCPs are being used by China. So like, does it matter if it's a script kiddie? If they have a script they pulled down from a Russian site that sold them an exploit kit that's crafted to make it very, very easy, and it's going to take advantage of an exploit that my organization cannot patch because they have to have this version of Oracle, right? And the other thing is that how do I translate all of this into something that my CEO or my CISO or my shareholders want to hear? So it's either going to be something related to money or national defense. I could have done a power plant here, right? Does anyone have any concerns that someone might hack our power plants and shut off our power? That's life and death right there, right? And then, of course, we have confidentiality, integrity, and availability as our triad, but maybe we've been talking about, I actually wrote on my arm, trustworthy, productive, yeah, and reproducible. So for institutions that are focusing on open science and research, we're not really worried about CIA. We're really worried more about what kind of value are we offering to the research community and to people who want to continue to grow and advance, the human understanding of the world we live in and who we are and what we're trying to accomplish here. So how do we translate all of that stuff we just saw into meaningful conversations for what we do about this? And this is a box of Legos, right? As far as I'm concerned. It's stuff, it's good stuff. Yeah, but you got to kind of do it yourself. And then you end up with this very low, moderate, high, very high. What does this mean, right? Like, what does this translate into? And I honestly, trying to put that kind of like all that, like all of the spreadsheets, right, that you get from this into a report, one report, just copying and pasting them into a report. Has anyone ever tried to do that? There you go, right there. So I started thinking, okay, well, I like the 853 control catalog. I find it useful. And we've been able to drive really positive changes, installing everything I talked about on slide 2, that whole solution stack, right? Everything we've done by referencing controls. And I started writing my risk assessments to say, okay, this is a risk, right? Download and execute, malware, exploit worms, and here is a, sorry, this page is funny. But here are the controls that are related to this exploit. This is why we have these controls. And I started trying to map this out to see if I could use this in risk assessments. Again, with spreadsheets, right? They were way too big, so I couldn't actually fit them all on the same page. So of course I said, okay, I have to write software for this. Here's the spreadsheet, right? Can you imagine going to your CISO or CEO or someone who doesn't do this every day, day in and day out, and saying, read the spreadsheet and make sense of it? There you go. All right, and so then I started dumbing down my risk assessments and just trying to make it so that I could say something useful. Like, have your admins log in as regular users and then just run that basic stuff. And then I was like, well, that's, first I had threats, right? And I'm like, oh, that's really a vulnerability. And what is even a threat versus a vulnerability? Let's define that, right? So I had the privilege to be on a panel with Dr. Ron Ross. He wrote a lot of Internet documentation and just create a huge amount of respect for this guy. He's like my hero, right? I wanted to print out bumper stickers that say WWRRD. Right? So I asked him this question. Where in this can I find like a value statement about what control I'm going to use to prevent a specific exploit? So given a specific exploit that I know is happening, where is it mapped to the control? And how do I figure out which one is better? Like if I want to prevent, this one's talking about pivoting in the network, should I do two-factor authentication or network segmentation? And he tells me straight to my face, oh, don't do that. Don't go there. That way lies madness. And then, of course, I'm a contrarian, so I'm like, what? We have AI. Like, dude, my best friend just started working for a company that's doing quantum computing. Like, reality is completely subjective. Now we've sort of demonstrated that. So you can't tell me I can't make this possible. So, of course, then, you have me. So this is just NIST, right? NIST is one framework. Yeah, that is, I think, creating some imposition and some uncertainty in how we're making our judgments. And then we have all these other frameworks that we might want to use instead. And this is, of course, my favorite XKCDM subject. Have you guys all seen this one? And then even SANS, so I'm a grad student with SANS, and I love SANS. SANS is like my high bar, whatever, it's my Kool-Aid and my everything, whatever. Even SANS has this auditing for the critical controls class that I did, and they still have a spreadsheet, and they still just check to see, do you have the control in place? Who's pen testing the controls? How do we know the control works? For what conditions does the control work? Where is this research and proof that I should be installing all these critical security controls? Yes, I agree. I mean, it makes sense, but I won't prove, right? And that's a joke with the beast. Has anyone here heard of the browser exploitation framework? Okay, so that's the worst the proof, but right, I'm sorry. I also tried to write these spreadsheets for my own risk assessment practice. I found myself having to, in order to make a display that made sense, just to show data, that I was quantifying the absence of a control, which is that, okay, you don't have a control, so you get minus 50%, or you get minus 75%, or you get minus 100%. Get a zero, right? And then we have this whole attempt to take all of these frameworks and all of these concepts and all these security controls and map them out in these giant spreadsheets. Can anyone read the spreadsheet? Yeah, I can read the spreadsheet. And here's the CAIQ. Has anyone used this for risk assessment, for vendor assessment, vendor security assessment? So this is an amazing, I know you can't read this slide at all, but you can't read the spreadsheet anyway. This is an amazing checklist for checking if your cloud vendor is doing security. And then, of course, we have the HEPSAT, which I didn't put on here because, it's not as bad, actually. It's weird than the CAIQ. I torture my vendors. I'm like, you don't want to do the Google VSAC? That's fine. You can do the cloud CAIQ instead. How about you just give me your SOC 2 audit report? So, and I was just listening to this podcast the other day, and I had to steal this quote, right? So, and y'all know you can pass an audit, right? And does it mean anything? And also, the RMF is very flexible, so you can make your own baseline. You can pull what you want out of it. You say, all right, all we do is we have a password, and then you can pass an audit. It's the password, and it's not working, obviously. So, my hero, right? I'm a big fan of looking at what we're doing and saying, oh, hey, it's not working, let's try something else. Even if we make a mistake, the next time we've learned something, right? So we're already making progress, I think, though. So I was looking at my list, and I don't want to be too negative about it. We actually have started building tools and databases that can handle things like too much data. We have vendors that understand we have rapidly changing threat landscape. And we have feeds that are amazing, like the NIST, right? The NIST open threat feed. We have information sharing programs. Just on RenISaac, you guys all know about RenISaac, right? So just on RenISaac, we had a Confluence worm that was attacking a version of Confluence that was, vulnerable. So we got hit with it too. We had someone exploit one of our Confluence servers. The thing is that, Romain Lortel from CERN, he posted the indicators of compromise, the PTPs, on RenISaac right away. He's like, hey guys, this is happening, you know, all hands on deck. And we all shared the information, and we got it, and a lot of people were able to go check and find out, yes, we have an exploit, or we have someone trying to. And in a week, you know, we pretty much had this thing patched, and yeah.
Did vendors stop lying?
That hasn't been fixed yet, just so that
Oh, the dark one.
right. Yeah, I should apologize. Thank you, that's my
You should have color coded.
visual display of data failure right here. We're gonna talk about that. I don't want to read all these things. I mean, I'm sure you've heard this. We're an afterthought, we're the party of no. We have all of this now. We're not an afterthought or a party of no. We've got enough media, sensationalization, attention. I think people are now taking us seriously. The problem, I think, is that we're coming back with answers that are so imprecise that we're not able to then, you know, have an intelligent conversation. Sorry. You knew I'd get here at some point, right? Sorry. And our education programs are actually, I think, significantly improving. They're popping up all over the country. They're actually asking for input from real life experience. Let's see. And so these are the things I think we need to fix. So we're all using different terms. We don't have relationships with our terms that are really well defined. We don't have the right kind of data. It's really not enough data anymore. I think it's the right kind of data. And actually, we do have the right kind of data, but I think we're just not examining it with the right lens or focus. Thank you all.
Question.
Yes.
It's a long list.
Yes.
May I interpolate that it is also expanding new events, new attacks?
Yes. Forever changing. Absolutely. These are things, if you look at this, so you think these are all kind of system one. Like, this is the human, you know, the human element and all this. And who's not following standards?
Microsoft.
Well, who at Microsoft is not following? I know. Well, like, people are writing network protocols.
That was system one reaction.
Yeah.
I know. Thank you. All right. It's 15 now, right?
Why doesn't its Cyberman need to be fixed?
Okay.
All right.
It's close to me.
Okay.
So getting to system 2, let's try to get to system 2. This is really the point of my my talk, is that I think, you know, I reached a point where I'm ready to try to start working in the system 2 space. I think as an industry, we need to mature ourselves, be working toward this, and we have available resources now at this point to work toward this. Does anyone disagree here? Anyone vehemently believe that I'm totally off my rocker? Okay. So here's how we're going to do it.
So you're saying it's complicated, not complex?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you think that the problem is decomposable?
Yeah.
That's a.
Except for the human element.
So
There's
there's
a
a
few humans that are
decomposable.
willing to decompose just to find out.
But you just got done saying the human element's a big
I think we
deal.
can work toward it.
You think we can?
Yeah.
There's a
Yes, the
decomposable
managed system one.
part. Okay.
Yeah.
Just-
Well,
just
that's a
clarifying.
good question, actually. I think we'll talk about that. So how are we going to start decomposing? Okay. We need to start measuring things, for one thing. And
Fastness to do it.
then, so we're going to identify and establish measurable goals. So first of all, our goals should be always measurable. I know, like, at my own home front, I talk about metrics, and I was like, please shut up. I don't want to do that. But it's really important that we start thinking about this. And as scientists, as research scientists, we need to be okay with metrics. What? Yeah.
Just taking notes.
Everyone knows about SMART goals, right? That's not anything new. So I want to ask the question, determine if any given threat event over a year, the probability that a security control will mitigate likelihood or impact, and I want it described as a reduction of expected loss. That's my SMART goal. Does everyone follow that? Okay. Does anyone see problems with my question already? Okay. I asked you a question. Oh, and I think if we get there, we're going to fix this. It takes too much time because we're going to be decomposing our problems into describable units of analysis if we do it that way. measurable units. Now, we have a problem with decomposing the measurable units right now that we need to fix, and that's that everybody uses different names, different terms, different names. Yeah, so we need to decide on terms and ontologies. So I'm going to propose this one just as an example. I don't know if this is the right one to everyone to jump on this one exact. This is FAIR, the Factor Analysis Information Risk. Has anyone heard of that before? Okay. They have defined terms, and they're defined in terms of probability, not arbitrary words that then you have to, you can't compare them really when they're just arbitrary words of things. And they have a relationship defined between how you calculate or how you determine probabilistic events. Okay. So I think if everyone wants to leave here and go and read the Factor Analysis Information Risk book, then they'll get the gist of what it is. There's quite a lot of information in there, so trying to do this in 5 minutes doesn't do it justice. However, I think we all need to agree that we need to adopt the same definition. And if we don't, we're not going to get past where we're at today.
That's specific to risk assessment, right?
Yes.
It's assuming that risk assessment model.
It's that we are doing risk assessment at all, really, which we don't have to do. We don't have to do risk assessment. No, it's install security controls. However, I would like to know that my security controls work. So some of this can be used to talk about testing security controls and ensuring that security controls actually mitigate for likelihood or impact any of the given threats that are out there. So yeah, I mean, we don't need to do this anymore. We can say this security control is 90% effective at mitigating the likelihood of something. But I like how they have it defined. This is a problem. Oh, you know what? I did have a typo. I'm so sorry, Rebecca. It should be probable frequency. Within a given time frame, that loss will materialize from a threat agent's action, stated as a probability expression. And I like this definition of vulnerability. It's a percentage representing the probability that a threat agent's actions will result in a loss. There's a difference. Does anyone here, see the difference there and how it might be more useful in modeling to use percentages?
Well, it's talking about actual events. You have to measure frequency as opposed to guess likelihood.
Yes.
So that's how when the insurance industry invented risk assessment, they were thinking we might actually be able to measure.
Yeah. Why can't we have actuarial tables for threats and exploits and security controls? Right? Okay. So have you guys heard of Hubbard? Hubbard, how to measure everything? Okay. I found this picture of Hubbard. I had to put it up here because Hubbard posing as the most interesting man in the world. You guys know what I mean, right? He just needs the Secchies, right there. Don't you think?
I don't think you could.
So I read How to Measure Anything in Cybersecurity Risk. I'm just going to warn you now. This guy, is anyone super sensitive here in the audience? Because he really kind of bashes the old way of doing things. And someone might be offended going out and reading him, so I just want to warn you all. If you have any resistance to moving to quantitative risk assessment, you probably don't want to read this guy. I hope this makes you angry. He also can solve everything. So he should come with a Ginsu knife set and a, if you read the stuff and you're like, man, there's a lot of ego involved here, just stay focused on this, which is this concept that we can express probability of an exploit given a dependence on a security control, right? And if we have these measurements in here of how effective our security controls are for any given exploit, then we can actually express this probabilistically. And he also has an answer for my CEO question, which is the return on a control is the reduction in expected loss over the cost of control minus 1. So he has answers, and I think my CEO or CISO would like to hear these answers phrased in this format, which is dollars. But you could take what matters most to your organization. So for CACR and for the research community, we could measure this in terms of what percentage of our data set maybe lacking integrity because we haven't installed the control.
How accurate do you think we can get these numbers that are feeding into? I mean, it's nice to get a number at the end. Everyone likes numbers. But I mean, if we're kind of making up percentages that a control mitigates, you know, a threat, and we're guessing the threat based off of some incomplete past data set, I mean, at a certain point, you know, the uncertainties in each of the numbers piles up to the point where the number might not be worth it.
So we're not talking about all running around doing this and by ourselves in our individual
There
organizations.
you go. We all have to do it in math to make it work right. Here's just an example.
Would that assume that we're implementing the controls the same way in that?
With the same names at least, or the same, you know, like you can point to it and say, these are the exact things that we did. Like you can say, I blocked port 80 for TCP. Well, I didn't block port 80 for ICMP and someone's using it for a covert channel that, you know, so, right, I blocked 80 for everybody, everything, except I forgot port 0. Sorry, I blocked 80 for everything. Now, yeah, so maybe a router protocol that my router doesn't know about. I know it gets complicated, but I think we can still get closer. What I want to focus on here, and this actually is to answer your question, so good question, thank you, is that both Hubbard and Fair present what they're doing, what they're talking about as a reduction in uncertainty. So it's not perfect. It's not going to give you 100% of the answer. It's going to reduce uncertainty. You can say, well, that doesn't help me, so I bought in. I think actually if we can say I'm 90% confident that my firewall will block 80% of all attacks coming in, I can actually back it. I could go do research then on that and back it with real data. And I might have to provide some of that data, right? I might have to hire some pen testers in and get some of that data. What, Greg? Is that thought?
No.
All right, but again, it's reducing uncertainty. So let me ask you this, Vaughn, how tall are you?
Well, 3'6" at the moment, today. 6 foot.
6 foot. How tall is Vaughn? Wait, stand up. Keep standing. Stay standing. How tall is Vaughn?
6 foot.
6 foot. He's not 5'11" or 3/4?
I trust Vaughn.
Are you pretty confident that he's somewhere between 5'11.5" and 6 foot and 1/2? Are you exactly 6 feet tall?
I didn't know there would be a test.
You know, through the day you shrink. You might be 6 feet tall first thing in the morning, and then you're actually like 5'11" by 3 o'clock.
That's true.
So are you 99% confident that you're somewhere between 5'1.5" and 6 foot?
Yes.
Or are you a little over? Maybe 6. So are we ever 100% precise?
No.
Okay.
I think one of the things that would make people a lot more comfortable is if we knew what the error bars were. Because in manufacturing, you know how precise you need to be at all times. We don't have that much data for cybersecurity yet.
We could put a comment.
Or maybe we do, but yes. And maybe we do, but we haven't asked those questions yet in that way.
And people don't share it.
Well,
we don't have that
we
yet.
have that. Nobody talks about Fight Club. That's in the problem set, right?
Yep.
Okay. So the other thing we're going to do, right? We're going to look at creating precision in our language, right? We're going to look at ways to express things probabilistically or with math terms at least. And then we're going to model, conduct active research, and we're going to test our security control. And if we do this, we're gonna fix this not enough data and it's really the right kind of data. And then nobody talks about Fight Club. So everything I've read says we don't have the data on exploits or attacks to know what actually happened during an incident. So that we can then come back and say exactly what happened with an incident. Like the big corporations, anyone for profit, they don't want to say how the bad guy got into the network, and sometimes they don't know. We need to change that. We need to change that conversation and make it possible for companies that are getting attacked and exploited to share that information. So we are getting, I think, more companies that are willing to outsource to vendors that are going to be managed security service providers that are collecting the data. You know, we have big organizations that are collecting this data, such as Verizon with their DBIR, and Mandiant, FireEye with their breach report every year. And we have other organizations that are doing this behind the scenes under NDA, and so they're not sharing exactly how companies are getting exploited. So what I'm going to say is that we need to reach out and get these data sets. We need to ask these data sets. And we can, as scientific researchers, find ways to anonymize the data sets so we can get the information that we need. And if we could just get the language fixed, then we probably could start talking about exploits, what happened in exploits, what really happened in incidents, without tattling on the company itself. And so then, in addition to that, what I'm proposing is that we carve out, an additional space in our field where we are actively testing security controls, where we come up with a framework and a model to test our security controls, and then we feed them into things like Monte Carlo scenarios and so forth. Does everyone understand what I'm proposing here? We've never done this before. I mean, you're going to have a grad student sitting, or maybe even undergrad student sitting, running security control tests in granular detail. But is there any other science out there that hasn't already done this? You look at what we do with physics, what we do with chemistry, what we do with, the other one. We do multiple tests. We run tons of tests. We put this into a framework. We put this into a model. We put this into a defined test, and then we publish the data, and then we publish what we did for the test, and other people can take our test and run the test themselves as well. I think we also need to ask for a more specific proof from vendors that there are tools, to do this. I think we can do this now. We have this MITRE ATT&CK framework. Have you guys heard of that? Mm-hmm. Really great. They've done a lot of the granular definitions for us. There's a whole list of open source attack tools that are using MITRE ATT&CK framework. We have this MITRE CVE, right? You guys know about the CVE portal. So they're doing analysis on exploits, saying, oh, it's easy, it's medium, and it's hard to exploit. I think we can make improvements on that and say, here we have a percentage of case studies where this was this exploit was able to be successfully used to compromise X amount of documents, or X amount of files, or X amount of data. And I want to say that in that specific terms, that this is how much data was able to be stolen, because we want to also think about detection and response in all of this. We have detection and response in our list of what we're trying to do. There's a book written in 1999 by Wayne Schwartzel called Time-Based Security. It was just an amazing book. It's still pertinent, even though it's 2019. He wrote about analyzing how you do your security controls based on how fast can you detect and respond. And maybe you don't have to prevent everything, and maybe you don't want to prevent everything. And for us, in the science community, we don't want to prevent anything. But what we do want is detection and response. I'll go to this slide in here. The SANS instructor is quoted as, prevention is ideal, but detection is must. For us, detection and response are really where we want to be, because we want to openly share, right? We're going to also think about the controls that we can put in place and test them, and test our own instant response capability, actively testing it to make sure that our detection and response can be quantified as how far into our network can an attacker get, how bad can it get, what can get stolen. So again, managed pen tests, but don't hire an outside company, get students to do it, right? That's pool of labor right there. Yeah, exactly. And that will, I think, solve these problems that we have, that we don't have the right kind of data.
On the subject of the right kind of data with regard to CVEs, I think NIST maintains a database tracing CVEs back to which software weakness caused them. That's an ongoing problem we have, because people talk about, oh, this vulnerability, this vulnerability. No, this software practice caused this class of vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And getting people to realize that fixing this thing would wipe out this class of things, but fixing that thing would fix one vulnerability is really difficult, and it's starting to get easier.
I agree with you. I'm seeing that. And MITRE has some of that in there too. Like, they'll pick a library and say, this library is vulnerable regardless of what software it's sitting in. So yes. And so we want to make sure that any control that we're installing is going to do one of these three things, right? And FAIR calls it contact, probability of contact, which is that probability that your threat, agent, attacker can actually get to the thing it's trying to attack. So that's what contact means. So, and then there's a couple of databases that I think we should all be aware of, which are, Varus is for the Verizon DPIR. They maintain this incident response database, so you can use it, you can enter information, and they're collecting it, and you can get access to it as well. And then attack by numbers. There are folks working on being able to use the attack framework to quantify exploits and also rate probabilistically. So there are people working on this. I was just at Women in Cybersecurity in Pittsburgh, and I sat next to a grad student who is doing her PhD thesis on the MITRE attack framework and then quantifying probability in attack and defense.
Can you say just very briefly what is the attack framework?
It's a naming schema for a series of things that you do to try to test your controls to see if they're working. So it's a series of pieces of code and then things that you do, and it replicates what bad guys do, what attackers do. So when they see a pattern from an attacker, they don't necessarily say, "Oh, this is coming from Cozy Bear or Fancy Bear." They say, "Here, attack," and then this is here's the attack, and then here's the thing that we're going to do to show that we have something in place to mitigate likelihood or impact. I think we can still talk about this as what mitigates or prevents, or we still maybe need to do that kind of full-on spreadsheet-based risk assessment. So again, moving away from system 1 and moving into system 2, and using data instead of intuition, and using real data that we're making and having fun with it. Like we need to get away from this idea that we can't make a mistake. And again, we've been in a situation, all of us, right? Has anyone here missed their child's first birthday because they were doing disaster recovery? Maybe not in this room, but I know people who've had that happen, and that's a huge world event. And then you don't ever want to mess up again, right? After that happens, we need to create environments where we can make mistakes, right? We can feel free to mess up some stuff. And then we're moving to data analytics and visualization, and we have a number now of products coming out with really amazing dashboards. And I just started reading some books on data visualization. One really good one I got Tuskie's book on. Let me show you on visualization and graphics, and then I got a book Jacobson. Stop is on the other page. So these are tools that we use. That's ProtectWise, that's Nuggets Block Server, that's what we install for our stuff, and then for our seminars. And these dashboards are amazing. They tell you a lot of information. Some of them I think may be a little cluttered, so I think we can work on that. We can work through it all. But we've made huge progress in being able to show a lot of information. And I think we can use this to have the conversations with our executive leadership, more than giving them a spreadsheet. Does anyone disagree with that? Okay. So what do we want to do with that, though? We want to make sure that we're not lying with those graphics. And I think we need more people, more researchers getting in with the skill set to build these analytical dashboards and pick the right data as a data set. Just work on. Jacobson. So I just want to quote that, if the environment is complex and feedback is delayed or ambiguous, right, algorithms will generally and relatively consistently outperform human judgment. So if feedback is delayed or ambiguous. So think about what's the effect when you shock someone a bunch of times and then they give up finally and lay down and just lay in a puddle. Again, how many people have just over and over again gotten this negative feedback where they don't get the answers and they just kind of give up and do this thing? Well, we got to stop doing that. Okay. So there are some really great free tools right now in this. So R Studio, and then this whole Python stack with Anaconda and a library called Pandas. We can start building these dashboards and doing data analytics right now. All of us today, I just started doing this. I just built a Jupyter notebook. And part of getting, plugged into this stuff, I have a team at NCAR that wanted to start building Jupyter notebooks to do climate modeling. And I'm thinking, well, I should be doing a Jupyter notebook to do cybersecurity exploit and whatever modeling, security control testing modeling. Or I found that all of these tools are very easy to get access to and set up. So I think we're making huge progress in these areas as well as data analytics and visualization. Does anyone use any of those? Again, with all of this, it's to support decision-making with senior leadership, because in the end, who's going to write the check to buy your thing or pay your paycheck or to pay? I would like to have educated and informed conversations with senior leadership rather than hair on fire. We have to, take down all our web servers because they have an exploit or a vulnerability. So with educating and calibrating decision makers, both Covered and Fair talk about calibration with doing basically confidence intervals with establishing probabilities. So they still have a use for subject matter experts who've been in the field for a long time, but they want to take a giant poll of all these subject matter experts. And they want to ask, what's your confidence interval for the probability of this loss event taking place? And that gives us language then, I think, that we would be able to use with senior leadership that is more speaking the language of business decision making. I would encourage everybody just to, if you're interested in this field, if you want to, kind of move it forward, to go read this book. And then these things will never, I don't think we can fix these things, right? So we'll always have people who just don't want to think about security, and they're going to do things that you wish they wouldn't. And I think that's okay. I don't think that we should put it on our users or our folks that have perpetual optimism about life, to make them have to start thinking about what bad guys are going to do to them. I think we need to protect them. So we come up with ways that we can protect them, and then they don't have to worry about whether or not their AV is 10 years old. We'll always have people who want to transfer risk, right? They don't want to own risk. They don't want to consciously deal with risk. They want to transfer risk, so they'll buy cyber insurance. Has anyone seen the latest news about cyber insurance companies denying claims?
The risk assessment doesn't work in the space.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's Zurich, the leader in cyber insurance, who are like, we're not covering that.
It's an act of God.
It's
It's an act of war. It's an act of war.
But when I was living in Seattle, this tree fell in her car, and her car insurance wouldn't cover it because it was an act of God. And I'm like, the tree fell in the car. Like, God didn't shoot a lightning bolt on the tree to, how many other things are an act of war or, yeah. And you're never going to fix whether we're IT security, cybersecurity, or cyber. Well, that's not true. We might someday. But I don't find this argument to be super useful. I was a big William Gibson fan growing up, so I'm okay with cybersecurity. I mean, he made up that term. It wasn't the feds, they just adopted it. And then I've seen NSF using this term, cyber, for everything related to the internet, right? So if it's an internet-based resource, NSF is calling it cyber. So that's a little confusing. I think we should pick our battles and not die on this hill right here.
Not just NSF.
Cyber.
And this again, vendors are never going to stop lying. So let's just start testing their stuff for real, and then sharing the information with us so we're funding. And so again, with burnout, a lot of people, I'm sure, are seeing all the articles on hacking conventions, starting to have presentations on how to handle burnout. Have you guys all seen that? Yes. There's really open, active discussion on Twitter about depression, stress. The community is really stepping up to support people. So I think there's a place as well to do the psychological research on burnout. But this is active management. We're going to have to actively always manage this. Okay, so brings me to the research talk. Right? First, I was going to talk about all the complications with doing instant response in a research talk. That was my first thing, my first idea for a presentation. However, Susan and Vaughn presented very well. I think you did that too, right, in the January research talk presentation? You guys talked about how to design the research doc to address some of this ambiguity and who you're going to contact an organization if you find some malicious thing in their network feed. So you already saw that. So here are some other things that I would like to propose that we could do with the research doc. We can start playing, we can start testing, we can start setting up sub-segments, and we can start doing some of this conscious exploit. We can use, honey tokens, honeypots, canary tokens within the environment, right? And we can get grad students, undergrad students excited about doing this kind of research and provide our own CTS environment really for this, but not with just the goal of training the next generation of cybersecurity professionals, but with the goal of gathering data with the right metadata tags, the right naming, the right conceptual application of what it is we're collecting, so we can feed it into data analytics. Does that make sense what I just said? Okay. And also, kind of maybe, I don't know, you have to get some papers signed, like some participation paper signed, like release of like health studies, care, whatever. You have to get that. Get on your own, you can get that. All right, and then publish the results. Seriously, let's start sharing results based on this different level of thinking about it, analyzing it, and I think if we do this, we're just going to improve the standards. We're going to force them to catch up with us. And honestly, I don't see any other way to do it, because I have now been in 5 years of meetings and discussions about, should we change? What's the point of changing? How do we change? Are we sure we can change? There's too much uncertainty in change. Let's just forge forward and do it, right? And then with auditors versus reality and security framework, similar to that, there's a concept in what I study like cognitive, like neurolinguistic programming and covert hypnosis and conversation. And this is idea of pace, lead, right? You pace the conversation. You have a conversation with your auditor using whatever language they have to use, but then you start leading them down a better path. Pace, lead. And we take the auditors with us. We teach them how to audit better. Where do auditors go to school?
Hell.
Right? Indiana University. Let's train them to be better. And then I think this is fun. Yeah, finally, specific to Indiana University, your information security practice principles are brilliant. And so again, with teaching the next generation of people who are going to design the frameworks, right? The frameworks need to be in compliance, basically, with your principles, or it's not a good framework. So one research area you could do, right, you could propose for someone here, is to go out and start analyzing the frameworks per your ISPPs, right? And then publish those results. I think that would be a great research study right there for more of like the social science around IT security frameworks. And who's in the law school? Anyone from the law school here?
Yeah,
I know at least one person is a lawyer. So we also really do need to work on this, because as long as the legal precedent on the book is promoting this kind of bad behavior, then we're going to keep wasting money. This is my least favorite control in the industry. It's the banner. Right? You know how much money we spent on putting a banner in place on every application or every node or whatever that someone's going to get into? We have open science. You want open scientists logging into computers. You want to make them available. Plus, we have 20 different kinds of Linux, and we're going to put this banner on, and we've had auditors twice in a row say our banner's not good enough. Why? Can you get mad that we don't have good SSL certificates on this one? No, our banner is what the problem is, right? We have to fix our banner. One jerk somewhere once got off on some charge because he's like, oh, dude, I didn't know I was logged into a federal government system, so, he didn't go to jail. That's why we have banners now, right? So let's fix legal precedent and make sure that we are training new leaders in law, right? New legislators to go forth and make sure that our cybersecurity laws are sensible and enable us to actually protect our people. Okay, so a lot of references. There should be all these books, all of them. And any questions? Yes.
I'm curious. I've been thinking about metrics and bond type a lot for that discussion, and because I've been hearing about metrics and cybersecurity for I feel like as long as I've probably pretended like I'm in the field. And one of the problems that you have with metrics is that if you're trying to measure things that are difficult to measure, you end up measuring things that are easy to measure that don't track with what you actually care about. So it's sort of like, you know, measuring bond type is easy. Measuring like how good a leader is bond is hard. Yeah. And so we might just say, well, he's a 6 foot tall leader, and that's how we're going to measure him. And I mean, then they say like, you know, CEOs are taller or something like that. That's a relative. I think that's a true fact. Yeah. And so like, I mean, I'm worried that we could run into the same problem where in like cybersecurity, we're like, well, we want only, you know, authenticated users to gain access to our system, which is like I mean, it's not too hard, but it's definitely harder than like how tall are you?
Yes. So let's decompose that. Seriously, think about it. How are we going to test this? And let's make some tests happen. Let's go test it. Let's apply the scientific method. Do it. You don't just have to make it happen like that. Let's work towards figuring it out.
Have any social science models ever been attempted to be applied to cybersecurity? Because cybersecurity technically is kind of squishy.
I know that people are working on them, but I don't have any references to this presentation. And I'm going to write that down because I would like to be able to point to them.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of the metrics and you're coming up with a p-value and what have you.
Yes.
Oh, good.
I think there's a lot of hope in what you talked about in regards to metrics, and your parallels with science are perfect because when you think about it, the scientific world took a while to figure out how they were going to measure things. I mean, on the order of a couple 100 years, we'll probably do it faster, but we'll eventually get there.
Yeah.
And now we're living in the world where we benefit from that work that was done. So I think that there's hope that we'll fix the problem.
So one thing, I'm leaving academia. I did work a lot in the private sector. So for me, it was sort of like, now life is about just learning. What am I going to learn next, right? But everything I started thinking about with this, I'm going to go try to build, I'm going to go build. I'm not going to try. I'm going to do. I'm going to go build an application that's going to do some of this for Amazon for security, like ongoing continuous monitoring security assessment at scale. I'm going to go build it using probability.
I wonder, have you looked at all into, and in like the business community, I know there's like the concept of leading and lagging indicators when trying to like evaluate, you know, business outcomes, because it's like you want to apply like scientific type rigor, but the problems are squishy enough that if you actually control your variables to the point where you can get scientific rigor, it no longer maps to reality. So you have to kind of like do this juggling of how rigorous can I get it while still making it useful.
Yes, you have to test that too. That's exactly the right question to ask. Write that down. Seriously.
Craig, write that down.
Yeah, Craig, write that down.
So I know, like, I think what's happened is that people ask these types of questions, and then they're like, oh, well, now I have to go rewrite my firewall rules for some one thing, and then you never get to that, right? You never get to be able to really answer that question. So we need to build more space so that we can actually do this, ask these questions, do the testing, and figure out what's working. We're getting close, though. To be able to do that a little faster with the tools that we have and the data sets that we have and the maturity that's existing now in education programs and in organizations. And your mind is.
I have to admit to a little skepticism here. And I think it stems from sort of two things. The change of pace in our world, right? I think of doing any study today, and if I go back 20 years, 20 years I predate Wi-Fi, I predate mobile devices, I predate cloud, right? So IT has changed substantially. So I'm skeptical about our ability to track anything right now longitudinally because of the change of pace of IT. Also, harder to quantify the change of pace of what the attackers are doing, right? I think, you know, the amount of nation state, the sophistication of the criminals are also changing, right? So we have two worlds changing on either side of us. Back to Scott's point, right? I don't know how we can nail enough things down to make sure we know what we're measuring. You know, are things better because of our security control, or did the world change? That can be hard to track. And so what seems to happen today is we take sort of quantum steps. You know, we all finally did two-factor because it just became, there was just enough evidence that it worked, right? The error bar is the amount of improvement was significantly larger than the error noise, that it just became a standard practice. You know, I don't know, we can, you know, smaller changes just seem to get lost in the noise, right? If you block port 733, some random port on your firewall, does that help or not? I have no idea if we've determined that. So this is sort of my skepticism in this whole quantification process. It just seems too much heterogeneity. You know, every network is a snowflake, the change of pace, and all this stuff going on. So I'm just throwing that out there in case you want to make me less pessimistic.
Yeah, I don't think that every network is a snowflake. We're all running on the same, well, we have a limited set of network protocols we're running on. And we have a limited set of things that can exist in an IP header or a TCP header. We have a limited set of things that can exist in a data packet. We have a limited set of ports. We have some flexibility in all of that, right? I do think we can decompose down to a lot of these things, and we can use, again, your brain can't hold all this in it at the same time. So we got to stop trying to have the human brain figure all this out. We need to use models, and we need to use algorithms and machines and software.
Another response to that is, I think part of the research mission is to identify the invariant properties and distinguish those from the variant ones. Right?
Exactly, exactly. And why I'm going to continue to say we need to build better frameworks is exactly what you're saying, Vaughn, is that we need a framework that will let us measure with less uncertainty, right, with more precision. And so we have all these frameworks, so let's collapse them all and build a framework that's going to let us actually do science.
And this is kind of an open question, but turning this around, are police able to determine with any amount of certainty where somebody's going to break into a house?
Yeah, it's uncertainty.
Okay.
I mean, there's a,
so how do they do that?
A reduction of uncertainty.
Okay.
Yeah. We just had,
that might be the other way for us to.
So we just had a woman fly to Colorado and buy a shotgun, and she evidently was really obsessed with Columbine high school shooting, and police were on her right away. They were tracking her. They found information. They had, social media posts. They found evidence that she bought a shotgun and ammunition, and they were tracking her right away.
I have to make a plug. So one of CACR's students, Grayson Harbor, has been working on some research talking about other fields, and policing is one of them, where that have established, or at least tried to establish, evidence-based practice, have tried to go from not so evidence-based to evidence-based, and it's sort of a survey of those other fields. And so we'll be getting that published in some form, hopefully very soon.
That's a great way to phrase it. We have evidence-based medicine, and I like to start calling this evidence-based cybersecurity. Yeah. And we're not going to maybe solve all of it in our lifetime, but so what? Who cares? Let's just work toward it, right? Let's have fun working toward it. Enjoy it.
I think that's a good note. I know we're already 10 past the hour, so I'd like to maybe ask everybody to join me in thanking Susan for her talk. And thank you once again for coming and visiting us here in Bloomington. I forgot to mention earlier, if you haven't signed one of the sign-up sheets, please do that. And that is our administrative payment for the pizza and the information here. And thank you all very much, and we'll look forward to the speaker series in the fall and having you all back. Thank you very much.